The first director of Jaws was fired because he kept calling the shark a whale.
Daddy wasn't fighting a pow wow. Daddy wasn't fighting a pow wow. I love my little cat. I'm very fond of that. I'd rather have a big bow wow 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 wow. Daddy
Hello,
wasn't
and welcome to the
fighting a
Mochiverse.
pow
I'm Linette.
wow.
And I'm Skip.
Did you ever hear that story before?
No, I didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought it was appropriate because this year, actually next month, is the 50th anniversary of Jaws coming out, June 20th.
And I can tell you that I can remember when Jaws came out, and I went to see it in a theater. I think I was in Boston for some reason and stopped to see it in a theater when it first came out. So it was just really a new release. And, that was really the start of the horror movie genre.
Yes.
Um,
And it was the first blockbuster.
yep.
I mean, arguably Star Wars was a blockbuster also, but that was what, 2 years before the first Star Wars?
It might have been, and another
73.
interesting thing about Star Wars
Oh
is
wait,
that
wait,
they
that
at
was
the
that was
same
77.
77, yeah.
Oh, never mind.
And
So Jaws was first. Yeah.
so the same time that Star Wars is playing, and I went to see it, and at the same theater, I didn't go to see Star Wars. We saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh yeah.
They both started virtually at the same time.
That's
So
right.
yeah.
Which I love that movie because I mean, I love Richard Dreyfuss anyway, speaking of Jaws, but I Jaws, okay, so I have a personal connection to Jaws because it feels like my movie.
Mhm.
It's got the Massachusetts connection because it was
Yep.
filmed on Martha's Vineyard. And incidentally, they're going to be reopening theaters for it. They're going to be showing it in theaters again. And on June 20th, on the 50th anniversary, they're doing a special screening on Martha's Vineyard, which is cool.
Yeah, and I don't know whether Universal still has it, but I think I think when we took Alan went to Universal, and they had the actual Jaws shark
Oh, they have
in one
Bruce.
place, one yeah, and then they had an exhibit where it was Jaws at that time, and I think we did both, and it was kind of lame. I'll just say that,
Well,
but
yeah, and they had a lot of problems with Bruce as well.
yeah. Oh yeah, they did
He
it. Yeah,
caused a lot of
yeah,
problems for filming. But yeah,
yeah.
so this story about the initial director. So his name is Dick Richards, and I never heard of the guy since then, and I guess there's a reason for it. He was pissing off Peter Benchley and the
Mm.
producers because he just would not stop saying whale. He
Ah,
just kept, and like Peter Benchley was like, "Hey, it's a shark. This is a movie about a shark. Every 20 minutes we say the word shark. Like you see sharks, it's a shark movie." And the guy was like, "Yeah, whatever." And so they fired him and they got Steven Spielberg instead.
well, it just if this guy's name was Dick Richards,
Yeah,
see that just proves that you can't trust anybody with two first names.
right? That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is going to be a fun one, folks, because we're going back to our trivia roots, I think. We decided we wanted to have a little fun again and we wanted to go back to our original thing where basically my dad and I just like share facts with each other. And did you know this and did you know that? And we're doing it in a slightly different way actually, which we'll see how that works. We did not share our notes with each other this time, correct, Dad?
This is correct. I think it's sort of, I like to think it's random stuff. It could be anything from sports, which I will throw a sport one at right now.
Oh boy.
Uh, There was a guy that played with San Francisco 49ers, Ronnie Lott.
Okay.
And one time he had his finger amputated during the game.
Oh.
And what happened, he broke his pinky finger and wanted to avoid leaving the game, not to mention the long recovery time
Oh
associated
my
with the
God.
break. So he says, amputate the finger, take it off, so
This is not the zombie apocalypse. What did he do? Take a cigar cutter and just
I'm not
stick
sure
his
how
pinky
they
in
cut
it?
it off, but they did, so that just that just really got you,
Wow.
they call that ultimate toughness. But
I guess. I mean, a show must go on. He sounds like a
exactly,
theater nerd to me.
yeah, pretty much. Another one fact, I think there's another football thing is like, and this has been changed, so I didn't research it, so I almost don't want to say it.
Oh, go
But
for it.
the Brad Johnson is a quarterback for Minnesota Vikings. He once threw a touchdown pass to himself, and the pass was batted at the line of scrimmage and came straight back to him. He caught it, ran it into the end zone. The only time in NFL history that a player has thrown a touchdown pass to himself. That fact has been changed. Josh Allen did it during the playoffs this past year. Not only
Wow.
did he do that, he also was the only quarterback to run for a touchdown in a game. So he did a bunch of things there,
Oh,
besides
wow.
that,
That's funny.
so
You know, this is gonna sound weird, but you know what that kind of reminds me of? Throwing a touchdown pass to yourself.
mhm,
There's a picture in Raleigh, Massachusetts
mhm,
at, I think it's somewhere, maybe in the library or something like that. And it was a
yeah,
picture taken during one of those big years, like the 750
mhm,
anniversary of the founding of the town. And it's a bunch of people, like a lot of people in the Rowley Common. It's just a group picture. And in that group picture is this one guy who's on both sides of the group
mm,
because the way they had to take such a large picture was with a long exposure, right?
yep, mhm,
And so, in between the time the guy first pressed the button or whatever, he ran behind the crowd. He stood there, ran behind the crowd, and stood on the other side. So he's on both sides of the picture
oh,
because of how long the exposure was.
well, that's wild.
So he kind of passed it to himself. But
He passed it to himself, yeah.
yeah.
Hey, did you know at one time the USA Rock Paper Scissors League was a real thing?
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, yeah. It even featured a $50,000 prize for the champion.
That's a pretty big prize for rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, it
I
is.
I have to say, like, I'm not a competitive person at all, and I'm
Mhm.
not very good at fast-paced games.
Yeah.
But rock, paper, scissors stresses me the hell out. Like, I instantly forget the rules and I don't know what to, and I'm also really bad with choices.
Yeah.
I'm good with strategy, but I'm better with long form strategy.
Yep. Yep.
So I never know what to do, and it's so stress. Everybody's like rock paper scissors, ah, and I freeze, and I don't know what to do. So I would be that person who always does like paper, or always does like I can't do it. I'm thinking to myself trying to randomize, and
Yeah.
but then when it happens, I'm not fast enough to know what the results are. So I don't know if I won or lost the round.
So does rock break scissors? I
So,
don't know.
so paper covers rock,
Right.
and I forget the rest.
Yeah. Okay. So let's not do that because we won't get it right.
We won't get it right. We'll have to issue a correction. I don't
That's
even
right.
know how to play
Exactly.
rock, paper, scissors. And this is also the same reason why I can't, I never had a like a regular watch. I always had a digital watch because it's too much pressure to look at a watch and know instantly what time it is. I have to like do a little bit of counting
See,
on the
so here's what we
watch
do to current. Here's what we do to confuse the current generation. First off, we give them an analog watch,
with
and
no numbers.
second, we get them to drive a standard shift car.
Oh yeah, fuck that. I can't do that.
Yeah,
Richard just got back from a trip and
yeah,
it was like a 3 day trip and I
yeah,
took Ubers because I can't drive his car.
yeah. See, so and the other thing you can, and I think about that like what we call a standard car. It's
Yeah.
like and also tell someone from the current generation that the car is a stick shift, and
Yeah,
you go,
stick. They're
what?
like a what? I know I have to say manual or something or whatever,
Yeah,
whatever
something
they
like
want me to
that. Just
say.
and even then they just get it screwed up.
Yeah,
Anyway, so that's funny.
that's good.
Yeah, the rock paper scissors thing, that's kind of bizarre.
That's really cool though. We should have had that. I wish we'd known that for our competition episode. That's a really big
Yes,
prize.
that is a really big prize for something that seems schoolyard, if you will.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, if it's that kind of money, I hope they're filming it and they have like referees and stuff. Cause
yeah, yeah,
like,
I hope so too.
oh my
Yeah,
God, can you imagine
and
getting so mad and like trying to dispute that call? There's $50,000 on the line. Like,
yeah, and that's a good amount of money to be, and it would definitely be an argument. So
there would be rocks everywhere because people would be punching each other out.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's always these weird, it's like I think we mentioned it. I think I told you the story. I know I told you the story in one of our previous episodes. We talked about it, and it's we were talking about the competitions. That's what you're talking about,
Right.
and it was the wife carrying thing,
Yeah.
and I called it when I was talking to one of the neighbors. I said I call it the wife throwing
Yes.
competition.
And then you wanted to throw everything
Yeah,
because you said later on, I was talking about the frog jumping, and you're like, yeah, frog throwing. I'm like,
frog throwing. That's
stop,
right. Yeah.
stop throwing all these poor creatures. That's
Oh,
so good. I have some too.
good, good.
Okay, the first one you may already know, but I find this fascinating because it has to do with like how amazing our brain is. Or I don't know, some people's brains. My brain's just weird, but the brain in general. So, did you know that your nose is always in your eye line, but your brain has learned to ignore it?
Hmm.
That's why you don't really see your nose.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah. So it's on purpose. It's not just because, it's in the middle of your eyes or anything. Like your eyes can see not just in front, like your eyes can see this full sort of camera angle of everything. But so this is a thing that your brain does on purpose called unconscious selective attention. Okay. And
Hmm.
it's automatic. And what it does, it helps your brain process information coming in visually because there's tons of visual information coming in through your eyes from all angles. And
Yep.
it's like what we were talking about with that picture in Rowley. That was like a panoramic picture process, right?
Right,
If
right.
you were to like think about a panoramic photo, and you're the photography expert, so correct me if I'm like way off, but like you take your camera and you pan it slowly over an area. And what the camera's doing is actually taking a bunch of pictures, but
Multiple pitches. Yep.
the end result is one big long picture that shows like a nice sort of picture
Right.
across. And
Yeah.
your brain does the same thing. And it's like it's taking millions and millions and millions of like little quick snapshots as you move, like if you were to move your head,
Hmm.
as you move your head across. And it just takes out all the irrelevant information and all the duplicate information, incidentally, and puts it all together in one picture for you. That's why if you were to take your head, unless you have something wrong, if you were to take your head and slowly pan it across a room, you're not seeing a jerky succession of different images in your head. You're just seeing a panoramic view of your room, you know?
Mm.
It's just amazing because if your brain didn't have this feature, it would be just like if your camera could take a panoramic photo and you had like thousands of photos that all were a tiny bit different, all next to each other.
Yeah, photography and the eye are two different things. It's like
Hmm.
when photographers are always struggling to take a picture to show what their eyes see. And what happens is your eyes, they adjust to everything.
Right.
So if you're taking a picture, like for example, let me try to get my thought correct on this. It's like
Yeah.
usually with a photographer, a lot of photographers, they'll take a light meter, to do their picture.
Right.
Your eye automatically adjusts.
Hmm.
And it's one of the reasons why when you take a picture, you look at it and say, that's not what my eye saw.
Oh yeah, like taking a picture of the moon. Yeah.
Right. The camera truly sees what's going on in real time, where your brain, along with your eyes,
Hmm.
makes the adjustment
Right.
uh, to adjust to light versus dark, and gives you a
Yes.
depth perception, and all of that, which is automatically done by your brain through your eyes.
Hmm.
And it's one of the things where you learn in photography. one of the struggles, and that's that they have is a depth perception. Uh, you'll start in basic photography. The way to learn to get depth to your photos is that you start with black and white.
Right.
And that's how you learn to get depth perception in your photos. Because when you do color, color just confuses the whole issue.
It's adding too many variables, right?
That's adding too many variables because usually depth perception is light versus dark. Whether you have light in the background, light in the foreground, back in the background gives you a depth perception. Make a picture look deep. It's why when you take a picture of a picture, it looks flat.
Yes. Yeah.
Because there is no depth to the colors, I guess is the best way to describe it, as best I can describe it. Yeah.
No, that's really good. Yeah. So, I mean, I can imagine, and I think they think that the reason why your eyes don't show you everything that it sees, including your nose, which you can see, is that it would be too much information. It's just too much for you to process because think about what your eyes are really for if you're a creature. If you're an animal, a human, they're mostly meant for your survival and your safety, right?
Yep.
If you were out in the wild or you're surviving and you don't live in a house or whatever, I'm talking about evolutionarily. If you have, I don't know, a wildebeest coming towards you, and all you could see is your nose. Or you could see your nose, you can see the wildebeest. There's a tree over here. Oh, by the way, also your side vision you can also see. So you're
Yep.
seeing everything happening beside you. You're seeing everything happening in front of you. You're seeing your nose. You could see your eyelashes. You could see all this stuff. That wildebeest's going to kick your ass. And it might kick your ass anyway. Or you may not be able to get it if you want it, if you want to kill that wildebeest to eat it,
Yeah.
because you're not going to be able to differentiate fast enough what you need to do because there's too much data. And your brain is like, this data is important and
Right.
this data is not important. Here's what it's important for. And that's also how your eyes can adjust when you move around
Yep.
to different things and how your eyes can refocus, unless, of course, you have a problem with that, which I always did. And now I have more of a problem with because I'm not only nearsighted, but now I'm farsighted. So I have to put reading glasses on when I read, but I also need my regular glasses to see anything further than an inch away from my face.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
it's
There's a reason for that. Yeah.
all that stuff is so fascinating to me.
Yeah. And as it's sort of funny is the way sometimes as we're talking about, my mind sort of flashes that you can't see your nose, but you would see it if you had a pimple on your nose because your eye would
Yes.
be saying, "What is that?"
And you're getting distracted by it.
That's
Yes. And
right.
also, if you close one eye,
Yeah.
you can see it if you want to. But it's considering where it is, you know, you should be able, it should always be in your field of vision, but your brain's like, nah, you don't need that information right now. Can you concentrate on the computer screen right now, please? Or can you concentrate on that blinking light across the room instead of why are you looking at the end of your nose? It's always there. What's your problem?
Well, the other thing is your eyes working together
Mm-hmm.
is if you do a little exercise and you put your finger up
Mm-hmm.
right in front of in line with your nose
Yeah.
and you close your right eye
Yep.
and then you close your left eye, your fingers actually move, but it really
Yeah.
hasn't moved
It
because
doesn't.
it's all
It's camera
perception.
one, camera two. Yeah.
That's right. And camera one and two puts it together to be right where it belongs. So
Did you ever, when you were really at the height of your photography stuff, did you like looking at old photographs? Did you ever get those, I don't know what they're called, but they're the things that have two pictures side by side and it's on a little rod, and when you look at them, it makes one
oh
picture
yeah,
with your
yeah,
two
yeah,
eyes. Yeah.
yeah. That I've seen those, and that's they yeah. I'm trying to think what it's called, but
Stereograph?
like a stereo. That's how
Yeah.
they put two pictures together to get. That's how they really would do a
It was
panoramic view,
yeah.
which
And 3D also.
in 3D. Yeah,
Because the two pictures would be slightly different,
right,
so
right,
that it would make
yeah,
a 3D effect.
right.
That's so neat. I loved those. And one of my favorite words is daguerreotype too. So I like old photography.
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting because, like I said, you started out with black and white photographs, and you got to appreciate if you got to the point where in your photography that you could show somebody a black and white photo and they go, wow, I like that,
Yeah.
and then you get people to appreciate what the difference is.
Yeah.
It's I think one of the photographs I think you've seen was the one I took in down Salem Column, where you had the columns that would be
Yes.
seem like they were endless. You know,
I love that picture because it was like the coolest. Yeah.
yeah.
And that doesn't exist anymore. That part of the build, that structure
No, it
doesn't
doesn't.
exist
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah, yeah.
So you've got a piece of history there.
Yeah. And a lot of photography is there's types of photography. There's the artistic photography, and there's what I call artistic, and then the technical.
Hmm.
When I say technical, is that I want to do a certain type of photograph.
Yeah.
So I figure out how to do that photograph or that particular feature, which is really artistic, but it's also technical to
Right.
get it artistic.
You're learning techniques in order to practice the techniques. Yeah.
That's right. For example, I think one of my favorite was to take a running water and to give it
Yes.
a silky effect.
Yeah, the waterfall one, that was a great picture
Yeah.
because it looks like it's very silvery, but it looks like and it looks kind of soft, but at the same time, if you look at it long enough, you can see movement when
Right.
you look at that
Yeah.
water. I always love
Yeah.
that waterfall picture that you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True or false? You probably already know this. Green eggs and ham contains 50 different words.
Yes, I think I read that once.
Yeah, it's true. It's just Dr. Seuss made a bet with a colleague that he could write a
Yes.
successful book using just 50 words. And he won.
Yes.
And that's where green eggs and ham came from. Isn't
That's
that
right.
interesting?
Yeah, that's right.
Uh,
And I think we've probably talked about this before because
yep.
the next thing I'm going to say, I think was the next thing I said the last time we talked about this.
Yeah.
There was a guy who had a bet with a friend of his that he couldn't write an entire book without using the letter E.
Oh, okay.
And he
Hmm.
did, and I bought the book. I have it somewhere.
Yeah.
It's not a long book, and by the way, it's also not a good book, but
Yeah.
he successfully wrote an entire book without using the letter E, which, by the way, is the most common of the letters that we use
Oh,
in the
okay.
alphabet. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things as I was going through this, and I just want to make a note, is I was trying to avoid movies and TV type references, mostly because that's sort of your genre and the way that you've done deep dives into it.
Yeah,
But I
definitely.
just try to get one or two. It's
Yeah.
like I found this interesting, which I probably knew about this, but I didn't bring it up before. Was the two things. First off, Frank Sinatra starred in the prequel to Die Hard.
Yes.
Yeah, he was based on and I remember the movie The Detective, which is what he was in,
Hmm.
and then that was the prequel. Um, and also, Arnold Schwarzenegger almost missed out on the title role of Terminator to
Yes.
none other than O.J. Simpson.
Yeah.
Did you know this one?
Yeah.
And the reason is just, if you don't know this, folks, now you know it. Simpson was passed over in part because he was viewed as too likable and innocent.
Yep.
Isn't
Who
it ironic?
they just couldn't think of him as a killer, I guess.
Yeah.
But you know what though? The running scenes would have been something
Yeah, that's true.
because
That's true.
he
Yeah.
was always running.
Yeah.
They could
Yeah.
have airport scenes,
Yeah.
have
They
Sarah
could do
Connor
it all.
running through
That's
the
right.
airport.
They would just put them all in there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
funny. There's in one of our episodes we were doing celebrities as heroes, and we took a take on Ted Williams. Actually, you really took a take on Ted Williams,
Yeah,
uh, which was more the the negative part of his service or his adventure going into the service.
right.
And one of the things that is I did a little bit of a deeper dive into it. He had a defer. He was like a 1A, and they wanted to defer him to 3A because he was the only son
Right.
in support of his mother, and that was really pushed more by his agent than him.
Yes, that's what it said.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and he ultimately, when he went into the military, he did it with his usual Ted Williams flair.
Hmm.
The time when he really got upset was the fact when they called him up for the Korean War. And the reason he was upset was because it had been 7 years since he flew a plane.
Yeah.
And he was worried that he wouldn't have the skills to fly the plane properly.
Hmm.
And as a matter of fact, I think he crashed on one of the missions because his plane was hit by
Oh,
flak, and all he ended up with was a sprained ankle, which I'm hemming and hawing here a little bit, but in terms of his plane was crippled, and they were talking to him about ditching, and he wouldn't do it. He
yeah.
says, I want to bring the plane back, and he ended up crashing the plane, but crashing it in the terms of his landing gear just collapsed.
Like a hard
So
landing rather
with a
than,
hard
yeah.
landing.
Yeah.
But the
Wow.
big thing about Ted Williams was like he was a great hitter, batted
Hmm.
over last person to bat over 400. And one of the things that I will say is let's talk about the sport part of it. The other day I was watching it was a podcast, and they had George Brett on, and George Brett was one of the last players to come close to hitting 400.
Hmm.
And what was interesting about this was that the question was put to him is why don't players hit? Why is nobody hitting 400? And his reasoning, and I'm going to say this in terms of this is really from a sports athletic standpoint. His point was that now in baseball, they have all these analytics.
Hmm.
They know they go up to the plate. They say, this pitcher throws a fastball 46% of the time. He throws a curveball 22% of the time. He throws off-speed pitch 15% of the time. And this is all in their mind.
Right.
And Ted Williams' philosophy, and I think the reason George Brett also, his philosophy is why he was the last person to come close to it, was that you go up to the plate, you don't think.
Yeah.
And nowadays, the players have too much to think about. And by the way, that applies to every sport that you can play. If you think, you mess up. And the mess up is because it slows you down.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Anyway,
mean, that's
yeah.
kind of like when you think about the Olympics. As a non-sport person watching the Olympics
Yep.
growing up, and even as an adult,
Yep.
you watch the Olympics and then people are like falling down all the time and they're like messing up their jumps and messing up their dives and messing up like their spins and everything or whatever, just based on whichever sport. And you're
Yep.
watching it and going, wow, they kind of, that one sucks, right? Why are they in the Olympics? It's because of all of that pressure and
Yep.
all of the things they're trying to think of. The best thing to watch is the competitions that come way before the Olympics. And they're
Yeah.
so much better. It's like watching minor league
Mm-hmm.
sports as opposed to like major league sports. Like you watch local games. I mean, Richard and I aren't really sport people, but he's not he's more of a sport person than I am.
Yeah.
And every time we drive by the local baseball field, because
Mm-hmm.
we have a local team, they're
Yep.
called the Tortugas, which is adorable.
Yeah.
We're always say to each other, we should go to a game. We should go to a
Mm.
game. And it's baseball. Like going to a baseball game, totally different than watching one on TV.
It
So
really
it's
is.
like
Yeah.
it's like a day out, it's kind of like more of a picnic atmosphere and more of a relaxing atmosphere than like say I don't know, football fans and things like that, one would argue, or excuse me, basketball. It was just more like constant action or whatever. But like neither one of us are into sports, but we just keep going, oh, I want to watch that. We should go watch a baseball game of our local team because it's small,
Yep.
it's local, you have more of an investment in it, and it would be more interesting because these people are like really doing it for like the
Yes.
love of the game and stuff, right?
Yeah. And they don't, yes, and they don't have a lot of information and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
back to a thought, a Ted Williams thought. You talked about the later years when there was
right.
a lot of controversy with him with the press and stuff. And I did a sort of a deep dive into his early years, and he grew up in California, and I didn't realize this, or if I did, I forgot it, that he was part Mexican, but his name was Williams.
Right.
And as a kid, there was always an issue with California with the Mexicans, just like everything else, somebody's picking on them all the time.
Right, right.
And that sort of develops a chip on your shoulder. And I wondered if that early years gave him that chip where if he didn't feel appreciated or if he felt attacked, he attacked back.
Maybe. Yeah.
And there was a lot of there was arguments that he was thin-skinned, but if you think about that aspect, that if you spent your lifetime understanding that you're part Mexican, but you have an American name, and in a way, you're glad you don't get picked on because the Mexicans get picked on, just for example. Okay.
Mm.
So it develops your personality, you
It
know.
does. It does.
Uh,
And there's a lot of, I mean, speaking as somebody who was picked on for
mhm,
various reasons,
yep,
it doesn't, as much as you would like to get over your childhood and get over things and move on with your life, that doesn't go away the way that you're treated when you're young
right,
because you were developing while you were young and your
right,
brain was developing and your reactions to situations were developing. And
right,
if you were always the target of ridicule or always always having to prove yourself or
mhm.
always having to change people's opinions, that definitely affects how you behave as an adult. And it
Yeah,
just can. And you can get over it, but it also informs a lot of stuff as you're getting older, you know.
yeah, it does, and what's interesting is that, and maybe we have a perception nowadays, but I often think in current day uh, in sports and celebrities and the acting and stuff like this, everyone's always telling you how great you are. And what you develop is an unnatural opinion of yourself.
Well, speaking of
So that
OJ Simpson,
so the first time someone criticizes you,
yeah.
this is a real problem. Now, I'm not saying it happens with everybody, but you worry sometimes, and I worry sometimes
Yeah.
for the generations that everyone tells them how great they are and don't understand that yes, you don't want to undervalue yourself. However, you have to really be realistic to understand that you know you're not perfect
Mm-hmm.
and you're gonna fail, and the whole idea of failing is you learn something from it to better yourself. And
Yes.
if you're always told that you're so great, when you do fail, you just don't know how to handle it.
Well, and this is the misunderstanding that a lot of people have with so-called gentle parenting, but also the philosophies of, for instance, Mr. Rogers telling kids they were special. And
Mhm.
uh, when you talk about sports, young kids' sports teams getting trophies for everything. There's a big
Yeah.
misunderstanding in that whole field
Yep.
from people who don't get it that
Mhm.
that's all a bad thing. But if you think about it in context and if you think about it specifically, Mr. Rogers wasn't telling everybody that I'm special and nobody else is.
Mhm.
He was telling everybody you're special because you're unique, and so is this person, and so is that person, and your
Right.
parents are special, and other people are special, and you're a person who deserves respect and love, and you also deserve to have opinions, and you have a mind, and you think, not you're the best. And
Right.
giving trophies to little kids when they're first learning a sport and learning how to like build up their sort of self-confidence. It's not about everybody gets a trophy because everybody wins. It's about, like, I got that when I was in horseback riding camp. I
Yeah.
got a trophy specifically that said I had good, it said best eyes, because what it meant was I was good at holding myself straight and looking straight ahead. I
Hmm.
didn't get a trophy. Everybody didn't get a trophy for best horseback riding. We got these little specific trophies that gave us little specific compliments on specific things we were doing well. And
Right.
that boosted my confidence to like do better things with that and also maybe some others. And I looked at my friends who got a good trophy for something else and said, "Oh, I'd like to have that too. I could work on that skill." And that's what people don't understand when they criticize the all kids get a trophy thing, because
Yeah.
the participation trophies and the specific little everybody gets a trophy for something different, those are to let a kid know that, hey, you know what? Maybe somebody might be faster than you. Maybe somebody hit more than you if it was baseball. Maybe somebody got more touchdowns than you if it was football, but you were good at this thing. And so that's valid and it's good. And this one over here, he was really good at that part. And that one over there is really good at that part. And guess what? It takes all kinds of skills to make a team. Like
Right.
a lot of people just don't understand that and they think kids are being coddled. But, and I know I'm getting on a platform here because I
Sure.
feel
That's all right.
strongly about
Yeah.
this, but like when you recognize that children are human beings that are developing, it's really important for their whole self-image and their whole self-confidence for them to be recognized for their talents and for their good parts, because
Mm.
all that's going to do is give them good feelings about doing good things and give them good feelings about the good parts of themselves, and maybe hurt less about the bad parts of themselves or the parts that aren't as good as their neighbor, as good as their best friend. Like, okay,
Right.
maybe I'm not this, but I'm that.
Right.
I that that should have come so much sooner in child development. And anybody who criticizes that kind of shit and criticizes like Mr. Rogers said everybody was special, they're going to hear that from me, because I think it was a
Yeah.
very important way to make children feel like human beings. And most people who take Mr. Rogers lessons are they're good people at the core.
There you go.
Anyway,
Okay, so the soapbox
that
is
was my
officially,
soapbox. I
yeah,
have as my friend Jess used to say, wifey's got opinions.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so there's that. Okay, so shall I do the next one?
Sure, go ahead.
This is a good one. I really thought this was cute and funny. It's not super long, but it's cute. Okay, so the shortest published scientific paper is called An Unsuccessful Self-Treatment of a Case of Writer's Block.
Hmm.
It contains no words. So I looked at this published paper, and it was literally published in the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis by Dr. Dennis Upper. He was a behavioral psychologist from the Veterans Administration Hospital in Brockton, Mass. And this was in 1974. So if you go onto PubMed or other research paper sites, you can see this research paper. It literally has a PDF that you can download. it's it's blank. There's no body of the document. So what
Yeah,
yeah, but so the academic paper is formatted correctly. So when you see an academic paper, it's got like a title, a date, it's got
yeah,
like, so and so et al, and it has all like the institution they're from, and then
yeah.
it has the journalistic document, the paper that it's published in. So it has all of that. It has headers, it has references to the author, like all of the references to the author, and it has a footnote.
Mm,
So this footnote said it's from the author, excuse me, says portions of this paper were not presented at the 81st Annual American Psychological Association Convention, Montreal, Canada, August 30th, 1973. Reprints may be obtained from Dennis Upper, Behavior Therapy Unit, Veterans Administration Hospital, Brockton, Massachusetts, 02401. And then it says received 25 October 1973, published without revision.
Yeah.
And then it's even better. It contains a comment from a reviewer because this is a scientific paper. It gets peer reviewed, right?
Yeah.
So the peer reviewer says, I have studied this manuscript very carefully with lemon juice and x-rays and have not detected a single flaw in either design or writing style. I suggest it to be published without revision. Clearly, it is the most concise manuscript I've ever seen, yet it contains sufficient detail to allow other investigators to replicate Dr. Upper's failure. In comparison with other manuscripts I get from you containing all that complicated detail, this one was a pleasure to examine. Surely we can find a place for this paper in the journal, perhaps on the edge of a blank page. Now, basically, what this amounts to is a very good in joke for science nerds. But I thought it was the cutest thing, especially the comment from the reviewer,
Yeah.
because he's like, hey, listen, it has all the information you need
Mhm.
to duplicate the failure. Because that's what, like a scientific research paper, it has to have enough information in it so somebody else can duplicate the study
Ah.
and have the same results, right? Because
Yep.
if your study is peer reviewed and the peer reviews fail or the peer reviews have different results, then your study's not valid. So this is actually an example of a perfect study because it can be duplicated over and over and over again.
Ah,
Because it
okay.
is a study of self-treated writer's block and it's blank. I love it.
Yeah, keeping it with the random stuff. Two things, true or false.
Hmm.
No one has ever guessed the exact price of a showcase on The Price is Right.
Really? I think
True
that's
or
false.
false?
I think that's false. I think that, you know, I saw people guessing Geritol right many times.
Well, it's only happened once in the show's history,
Oh, was it that guy who cheated?
and they accused him of cheating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by all accounts, it was legitimate. And then like there's some more here. It's like these are an idiom, caught red-handed. Did you know what that was referring to?
I mean, I assumed it had to do with, you know, murder, but I don't think so.
Well, it it means to be caught while in the process of doing something wrong. That's
Right.
typically what we call it.
Right.
It originated in Scotland in the 15th century. It was coined in reference to an old English law that was established to punish people who butchered stolen farm animals. According to the law, for a suspect to be convicted, he had to be found with the butchered
With the
animal's blood still in his hand.
right, the blood's on your
To
hands,
be
you're red-handed.
That's right. So you caught red-handed.
Yeah. Yeah, which makes perfect sense. I,
Yeah.
ass- I'm over here assuming it's people, but yeah, butchered animals.
Yeah, and here's two interesting one well in a row
Yeah.
of things that have to do with uh in the Middle Ages, that have to do with marriage. In the Middle Age, when bunny ears were put behind a man's head, it meant that the wife was cheating on him. The
Oh,
two fingers held up to symbolize the horns of a stag, which apparently lost its mate to a rival stag. Mischievous people would sneak up behind the man in question and flash the cuckold's horn symbol to insult
I
him in
was
front of the
I was gonna
onlookers.
say they called him a cuck.
That's right. That's right. In the early days of photography, people would flash bunny ears over their unwanting friends as a joke.
Right.
Today, much of it's been forgotten. Obviously, bunny ears is known as a symbol of peace. Isn't that funny?
I had no idea it had a very specific wow. So instead of just making someone look silly with bunny ears behind their head, they're basically doing the equivalent of like drawing like something really rude on their forehead while they're
Pretty
sleeping.
much, pretty much. Here's another one which is pretty odd. To me, it was obvious when I read it, is why where a best man came from.
Oh.
A
Oh, I
best
bet.
man,
Yeah, I bet I
yeah,
know
yeah,
this.
had the name because it had to be the best swordsman that the groom found in the 16th century among the German Goths. It was grooms to literally steal or kidnap brides from neighboring communities,
Right.
or to elope with the girls whose families wouldn't approve of the union. This was dangerous. So the groom needed the best swordsman to back him up. The best
Yeah.
man stood with the groom at the wedding so he could fight off angry members of the bride's family, competing suitors who wanted to steal the bride for themselves or to keep the kidnapped bride from running away. I like that. I like that
He's basically his bodyguard. Yeah, to keep the kidnapped
He's
bride
about
from running away.
keep him from running away. I thought that was the best part of that whole thing.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, so
it
yeah, that makes
yeah,
sense that he would be his bodyguard, but I like the extra part about, make sure she doesn't run.
exactly. Now here's one when I saw this, happy as a clam.
Oh, did we talk
Let's,
about this before? It
I
sounds,
don't think so, but let's hit it. And if we did,
yeah,
we'll
yeah,
correct ourselves.
that's fine.
It's used to imply, obviously, somebody's very happy and content. But why
Right.
clams?
Because it looks
As it
like a big
turns out,
smile.
yeah, no, this frame is a shortened version of a longer simile that originated from the American Northeast. Fishermen and mariners noticed that most sea predators would swim away at high tide, and clams would then come out and swim around carefree without being attacked. So they
Oh.
coined the phrase as happy as a clam at high tide.
Ah,
The phrase was so widely used, you can see how that would shorten it. It was
right.
so widely used that the region that in the early 19th century, it no longer was necessary to say it in its entirety. People were already familiar with it.
Well, that's good. I know another one that's a little bit rude that actually Richard uses the long version of. Uh, so you've heard, when referring to how cold it is outside,
Yeah.
you've heard colder than a witch's tit.
Yep.
The long form version of that is colder than a witch's tit in a brassiere.
Ah, Nebraska's here.
And
Okay.
he uses the long version because it's much more interesting. Because that's much colder than just, being a witch boob.
Right, right.
If you're in a
Hey,
brass brassiere, it's much colder than if you weren't.
right.
Now that, of course, cannot be a super old saying
No.
because brassieres haven't been around that long, but you know,
Hmm. That's
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah, like
I think I've heard that one before. I knew that, I saw I'm dominating a little bit, but I have one other I wanted to talk about, which again, I'll go back to when we did the celebrity heroes.
oh yeah.
And one of the things that I had talked about and something a lot of people didn't know till you said it was Eddie Albert.
Ah, yes.
And you and I talked about this privately. And they were in a lesser known island, and actually this island was very important during World War. During the mission, like 100, he came across like 150 Marines. 100 of them were still alive, waist deep in water, suffering from casualties because the Japanese were hitting it with machine guns.
Yeah.
And Eddie Albert was his mission was he was a Coast Guard man, and he drove those ships that brought the Marines up to the edges of the beach where they came off.
Right.
So they were stuck, and there were conflicting versions of what happened. But basically, what he did was he got into his ship, which was a smaller boat, and which had barrels of gasoline so that it could stay in the water longer. And he started picking up the Marines, you know, and under heavy fire the whole time. He picked up something like 45 or 50 Marines, and he went back for more with someone else, and they picked up 30 more. Basically, saves like 70 Marines who were under fire at the whole time he was under fire.
Yeah.
The interesting thought about this is in his later life, and from my standpoint, and I'll just wrap this up real quickly, was that when he was asked about this, he didn't remember the details because he was suffering from dementia.
Oh, yeah.
And it was one of the things he never talked about a lot, but if you're under heavy fire and you're trying to carry people, pull people onto a boat, and in some ways he felt like he also felt that he injured some of the Marines pulling them onto the boat,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
you're saving people's lives, that, and it was interesting, that to me, the story. Eddie Albert did Green Acres. A lot of people thought he was kind of goofy,
Yeah,
in Green
but he
Acres.
strikes me as a very kind-hearted and gentle dude.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that particular
sounds like
island was a very fierce fighting. It was actually in 1943
wow.
uh, when the battle took place. But actually, yeah, I said dementia. He had Alzheimer's,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, and he was one of the things he did remember is that he was on the island for a short amount of time, but he was under fire while he was on the island from the Japanese because they were constantly firing at the soldiers who were sitting in the trenches. So it was quite an intense battle.
Oh,
But the reason I
absolutely.
bring it up is only reason I brought it up because I wanted to bring it up when we were doing the celebrities who were heroes, and to the point from my standpoint is you get someone that was a hero that didn't look at it that way,
Yeah.
and it wasn't well remembered, and he got a Bronze Star for it. So that to me, knowing the scope of medals, probably wasn't, in my humble opinion, sufficient for what he did.
Right, right. And also and also it just reminds you that you really never know the depth of a person's experiences,
Mhm.
what
Yep.
really goes on in their lives,
Yep.
and you can have an impression of somebody, but it may not be correct.
And that's another part of my whole point about it is that not when you look at someone and you're thinking, well, he's a goofball or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and you don't know what their previous story is or what they did. And just because they don't talk about it or brag about it doesn't necessarily mean that they're ashamed of it or they weren't worthy.
Yeah. And also in the further scope of underestimating celebrities
Mhm,
as not important people and not significant people and just not even people anymore once they
mhm,
become celebrities. I love when a celebrity decides to, I don't know, speak their opinion about
mhm.
something, usually political, and everybody gets so mad and tell them they have no right.
Yeah.
Actually, they do have a right. And like if you had a platform and you felt strongly about something, you would too. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But they're just mad because it's a different opinion than theirs. And they're like, go back to what you're doing. You shouldn't be doing that. And it's like, really? Because like I have a job, but I also do other things besides my job in my life. Like,
Yep.
does that mean because I'm a pharmacy technician that I'm not allowed to also be interested in cooking or writing or podcasting, you know, or
Yep.
singing or any of the other things that I can do actually? Uh,
Yep.
I'm pretty funny sometimes. Is that okay? Even though I work in a professional environment?
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just such a silly, people are so silly.
Yeah. Well, it can be, but the other side of the coin is, with the celebrities is you're right, they're human beings, but there's an argument that also says that they're valued for not a contribution, so
True, I suppose. And I say like, when they say something political and people don't like it, it's totally if they like lose jobs because of it, because
mhm,
it's like a political thing they said that a lot of people don't agree with, that's also their right too.
yep.
And they understand that, right? And if the celebrity themselves gets pissed off about that happening, I mean, they should expect, if you're gonna like say something bad, objectively bad,
Mhm.
or objectively terrible, or do something objectively terrible while also being in the public eye, and then get upset when people stop watching your stuff or whatever, that's a whole other ball of wax too.
It really is. I think, yeah, I think I set the line is that this, they can give out their opinion.
Yeah.
It's when they do something that is particularly bad for whatever you want to call bad,
Yeah.
not keeping with society norms or whatever the case may be,
Right.
criminals specifically,
Yes.
then there is a definite reasoning for not valuing them.
Oh,
Uh,
sure. I mean,
yeah,
listen, like I struggled for a while with, and this isn't necessarily criminal, but he probably maybe did do some criminal stuff allegedly in the past. But I like struggled with the fact that I struggled with the fact that I used to love Woody Allen films.
mhm,
And then I still kind of like some Woody Allen films. But watching them later after all the creepy shit, it's hard to like them as much, only because of human nature. But if
right,
somebody else still did, I would have a hard time being angry at them for still liking that movie. But there's a
right,
lot of people who are like, I mean, with the Harry Potter thing, there's a lot of people who are like, I can't like Harry Potter because of J.K. Rowling's views and stuff.
right,
And I could identify with people on both sides of that. Like, I, some of the things that J.K. Rowling has said have been like horrendous. I enjoyed the books.
right,
I
right,
still think they were pretty well written. I think she got a lot of her sources from, like, she stole a lot of her sources and stuff. And I think she like rehashed a lot of story. I mean, she's basically telling Star Wars over and over again, but okay. But I still was entertained by the books and the movies.
right.
I also don't like the things she said. Lots of artists get separated from their work that way, but like Kevin Spacey.
Mhm.
Like when I watch Kevin Spacey movie, some of them I still like, but some of them I'm watching and I'm going, I don't know if I like this movie anymore because he's kind of acting like the thing he did.
Yeah, well,
You know what I mean? It's bad.
yeah, yeah. No, it's so true. It's when I always look at actors and actresses
Yeah.
is when they're in a role and you don't think about that person. You're
Yeah.
thinking about that character,
Right.
then they have really done their job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you get to a point, to back up your point, when you
Yeah.
get to a point where their actions outside of their acting influences the role they're taking,
Yeah.
you're like, I don't care for that much.
Yeah. Like,
I know that's Kevin Spacey. That's not,
yeah. Or
you
when you're
know,
watching an old Woody Allen movie and you go, oh, wait a second, he's dating a teenager. Wait.
yeah, yeah, oh yeah,
Wait,
yeah,
wait a second. Why did I like this movie before?
yeah. No, it's true.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty bad.
Pretty bad.
Go
True,
for it.
false. Russian cosmonauts used to carry weapons in space in case they landed in the wilderness. True or
Like,
false?
like to encounter aliens, or in case they landed in our wilderness.
Yeah, our wilderness.
Oh, I think that's probably true.
Yeah, yeah, they did. They carried knives, machetes, even guns as for protection from
Like
they said it
earthly
terrestrial
enemies
wildlife, but I think it's mostly if they landed back on Earth, and they
in the
didn't quite hit
U.S.
where they were supposed to. Yeah, they landed in Maine or something.
Oh my God. Well, that does kind of make sense actually, because if you're in the middle of like Cold War,
Mhm.
right? And maybe, like space travel is brand new and you guys are like the first, one of the two first people to do it.
Yeah,
You might mess up on your landing, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
Wouldn't be a good thing to not land in the water. Where did they land in the water too when they had successful?
Yes,
I
yes,
thought
that
so.
was mostly the case that they landed in the water. I don't think landing on in land hadn't been anything they'd done until fairly recently. I
Yeah.
think everything was set for them to land in the water, and
Well,
mainly
it's a bigger
because
target to hit and it's
it's a
much
bigger
easier.
target, and if the parachute didn't quite work as well as it could, if you land on land,
Well,
it's a sudden stop that kills you. So
Well, actually, technically, well, that's true. And you know what? They might have thought that it was better for that at the time, but they know now that landing on the surface of the water at the same speed that you land on the surface of the land is the same effect because the
right,
water, it's just as hard when you hit it.
right,
It's not like
right.
it's a
Yeah,
marshmallow, even if it was a marshmallow. But yeah,
yeah,
so that's interesting. I never would have thought of that.
yep.
Okay, so I have one more for today, and this one made me laugh so hard when I was reading it, and also made me laugh so hard when I tested it out on the subject. Okay, so this one is specifically for Richard. So, I mean, I know that most of the people listening don't know Richard, but I know that you know Richard, and I know that
Yep.
I know Richard. And Richard is the love of my life. He's my partner. He's my everything. He's not, patience is not one of his virtues, and especially patience with objects and things and buttons. And this is about buttons. So, and also, when I told him this, he had a very predictable reaction. So, the fact is, about 80% of the closed door buttons on elevators are just for show. The doors are on a timer. So, you try to press the button to close the
Right.
doors faster. That's about 80% of elevators, that button does nothing.
That doesn't work.
It doesn't work. And the first thing he said to me was the word bullshit when I said it. But it is true. And the reason for this is not to frustrate people, but the reason for this, and this is according to the executive director of National Elevator Industry Incorporated, the door close function is largely a thing of the past. So it did work in the past,
Yeah.
but the 1990 Americans with Disabilities Act made it a law that requires elevators to stay open long enough for someone with a disability to get inside. So they're open for a set amount of time and then they
Hmm.
shut. So after that law was passed, any elevators that were built after that time had to be open for a set amount of time and
Okay.
couldn't be closed sooner than that time so that a person with a disability could get on the elevator. Now, there are plenty of elevators that exist that were built before 1990.
Right.
Now, however, a lot of the elevators built before 1990 also had buttons that didn't work just because they just put them on a timer anyway. There was no, they didn't think it was important to shut the door faster. So they're estimating that around 80% of elevators, even the ones that were built before 1990, that button just doesn't work. And people who think that's good, they're going faster, it's an illusion.
Wow.
And
Now that's a good one. Yeah.
Richard does not agree. Um, and he's shaking his head right now. So my question that I wrote on my notes is that why do they even still have the buttons, right? If it doesn't, like if you built an elevator today, why would you put a closed door button on it if it doesn't do anything? Um, and my guess is for someone like Richard who needs to compulsively press the button a million times, thinking that he's somehow making it close a little faster, it makes him feel like he's a little more in control of the elevator. An elevator is a place where you feel a little out of control. It's just like pressing the enter button a million times when the computer's doing its thing. It's there for you to press as many times as you need to psychologically to feel better.
So is this, wow. So now the button,
The open door button works,
yeah, but
but not the
is
closed
this
door button.
inside the elevator or
Inside the
outside?
elevator,
Inside the
the
elevator.
one that
Okay.
tells you to close the doors,
Right. Okay.
people
All right.
press that to make it close faster.
It won't.
It doesn't
Yeah.
work if the elevator was
Okay.
built after 1990.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So then the argument, why is it that, yeah, it's there because anal retentive needs to push the button.
And also like it's there because people expect it to be there.
Yep. Yep.
And what would you do? What would you do if you got into an elevator that didn't have a button you were looking for? You'd be kind of scared, right? Like,
Yeah, you'd go, I
where's the
don't
button?
know.
What if I can't close it? What if I can't open it? What if
Right.
I can't press any buttons to the floor? If it's a voice activated elevator, what do you do? Like, yeah. So that's what
Oh,
It just
That's
tickled me
a
so
good one. I
much.
like that one.
It's a
Yeah,
very good one. And when I read it yesterday, I was laughing so hard. I was like, Richard is gonna love and hate this
yeah,
one.
that's a good one. I like that. I like that one. That's a very good
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
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 excellent, excellent. Do you have
yeah.
any more?
That's it for today. I have some more, and then I think we should do another episode of this next time.
Uh,
I think we should go with this kind of trend for a while. This has been very good, I
yeah.
think.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, so folks, that's our episode for this week.
Yeah.
If you would like to get in touch with us, send us an email, mochiverse@gmail.com, where also looks like you get your appointment reminders because I think you put the wrong email address in with your doctor's office, Dad.
Could be.
But that's okay. We have so many email addresses personally, so it's fine.
Yep. Yep.
You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or anywhere that you get podcasts. But Apple Podcasts, you can give us a rating, and that would be super nice because then more people can listen to us, and then we can be famous, and everybody can think we're super funny and awesome. So I guess all that's left for us to do is dad jokes.
I have a short list.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that'll make you happy. I found a book, How to Solve 50% of Your Problems. So I bought two.
That is really good.
Yeah. Why? Why, oh, why? Why did the coffee taste like dirt?
Because it was ground this morning.
That's right. What's the best present?
What?
Broken drums. You can't beat them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
I
good.
made a song about tortilla once.
Okay.
Now it's more like a rap.
More like a rap. Oh no, I
Yeah,
think you might have done that one before.
I might have. Yeah. Did you? And I'm almost sure I did this one before. Did you know that corduroy pillows are in style?
Yes, you have done this one
They're
before.
making headlines. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh no, was that the last one?
Unfortunately, it was, the master. It's weird. I had the master list. I have my master list of dad jokes,
Yeah.
and you know, uh, old artists never die. They just get the brush off.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Old players never die. They just wait until their number comes up.
Oh, I like that one.
Yeah. Old photographers never die. They just stop developing.
Oh, that's a good
Yeah, yeah,
one.
yeah. Yeah, old bricklayers never die. They just throw in the trowel. Yeah, I know. And this one. Okay, I'm trying to end this one. Old dairymen never die. They just get butter and butter.
Oh, butter and butter. Those are good.
Yeah.
Oh my God. All right, folks, I
Okay.
guess we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Cool.
Daddy wasn't finding a powwow. Daddy wasn't finding a powwow. I got a little cat. I'm very fond of that. I'd rather have a pig. Bow wow.
Oh,
Why did the Rolling Stones stop making music? This is dumb one.
why?
Because they got to the bottom of the hill.
Oh my God, what?
I know. I'm shaking my head when I did that one.
I'm like, because it gathered no moss? Like, what are you
Yeah,
asking?
I know. I know. Oh.